Hello, Paul.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
I'm good. Happy Canada Day.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I sent an email to somebody and I told them it was Canada Day in the
hmm
States, and she said, I had no idea. And
Many
I,
people didn't.
well, July 1st, it's Canada Day. And thank you. Thank you for knowing. How is it that
Let
you
me
know?
let me before we move on to further discussion of Canada Day and other things, including some things happening in American politics. Let me introduce
Wait,
this. I'm Robert
things
Wright.
things things happened in American politics?
Yeah, I know that the preparations for Canada Day are kind of all consuming.
That's
I know
right.
up north,
It,
but
the
I'll
Canadians
be
have
able to
no
catch
time to,
up to
yeah.
date pretty quickly here. So you're Paul Bloom, publisher of the Small Potatoes newsletter, world famous psychologist and author. We're going to make use of your credentials as a psychologist to discuss Joe Biden's brain a little. See there, I slipped up. That was a glitch. I said Joe
I,
Biden's brain,
I
and
put a
yet I
little
think I could be president. See,
I put a little tick mark. You get 10 tick marks. It's
yeah,
dementia. That's how we do it here.
yeah.
Um,
Uh, and that's an opening question. Do you think of dementia as this like discrete thing? Like either you have it or you don't? Because, when I was a wee lad, we used to use the term senile, and
yeah.
it wasn't thought of as a pathology. You'd say, oh, don't worry, he's just senile. And the idea was you get older and older, you get more and more senile. It happens to us all. Or you get, your cognitive functioning declines. Eventually, it gets to the point we call senile, but that's not like a disease, we thought,
Yeah.
you know?
So first, we did this over email, but let me be the first to say that you were ahead of the game on this. You were talking a while ago, maybe like a year ago, about Biden's decreasing cognitive function and the implications it would have for the election. I was maybe a little bit saying, everybody has off days, and maybe this video's edited, but you were pushing on this, and
Let me tell you,
you
I can
you
show you a tweet before the 2020 election, before he was even nominated, calling attention to this, perhaps prematurely. You could say I'm just like a broken clock that's right twice a day. If you say Biden's senile long enough, eventually you'll be right.
sooner or later.
But I did before this year's primaries, as longtime listeners will know, trot out in the presence of Mickey Kaus an elaborate plan by which Barack Obama could orchestrate an open primary
Yeah.
and kind of shove Biden off the stage. But did Barack listen to me? No. And he's still not listening.
No, he's tweeting his support for Biden, but we'll get to that. To get to what you're saying, my understanding, and I am not an expert on this, but my understanding is there's regular cognitive decline associated with aging.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric Hole, really smart guy, has a nice Substack on this in response to a New York Times article, which aged very poorly on superagers, which speculated that Biden is a superager and no decline at all. And the truth is, everybody declines. There's mental decline, there's physical decline.
Oh, yeah.
And and there's a regular scope. A 70-year-old is not the same as a 50-year-old, who's not the same as a 30-year-old. And some people decline quicker than others. And you see this with Trump versus Biden on stage, where Trump is relatively energetic, fairly lucid, whatever his moral problems are.
As Trump goes.
As Trump goes.
As lucid as he was 4 years ago, yeah.
You could say that Trump has set the bar fairly low for Trump, and then he benefits from this. So there's regular decline, and then there's things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and other sort of degenerative diseases associated with the elderly. I'll just say, I'll leave this to experts. I've seen people on Twitter pretend to be experts and say it, but I have no reason to believe that Biden has dementia or anything like that. I think we're just seeing, it was a debate, which is a high pressure environment. It was held late at night. And, like Biden, I myself am at my best from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And he had a cold. So,
Well,
that's what you get.
You Canadians are known for your charitable attitude toward all humankind, and you're displaying that here.
Canada Day. Do you think he has Alzheimer's or something like that?
No, I don't think he's had Alzheimer's. As I've experienced that, observed people actually had it. It's a loss of even short-term memory that's pretty pronounced. Now, I don't know whether there's a pathology called dementia that's separate from Alzheimer's, but he certainly doesn't seem to have classic Alzheimer's. I mean, I think he's in a state of significant cognitive decline,
Yeah.
such that he should not be the nominee.
Yeah.
But and I actually want to go over a few things he said with you because they exhibit slightly different issues, I think, and kind of get your take on them. But it's pretty bad. And we can talk about the. Do you want to talk about the politics of it first, or go straight to the diagnostic portion of our show, where I actually read these things and in one cases play a clip?
I have no expertise in the diagnostic stuff outside of the idea that he's really
I'm
lost the
sorry,
step.
but you are this podcast
Yeah.
expert.
But-
Paul, you have a PhD in psychology. That's all. That's all we ask.
I do. And anyway, I want because I want to hear you do the readings. So how could we resist that?
Okay. So let me start with one. Okay. So I just went back and listened again to the first 30 minutes. And, it wasn't quite as bad as I remembered, I will say. On the other hand, I did find these three things I think they're all within the first 25 minutes. Let me start with the least problematic. This has not gotten much attention, and it's not that egregious. I think it's a little odd, though, and I'd like to see what you make of it. So this is on Roe versus Wade. Biden says, I supported Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. The first time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. Now, I actually kind of know what he meant.
I think I understand that.
Fine, but a couple of things stand out to me. First of all, the word time, and maybe I'm being a little picky here, but it's kind of a crude way to refer to a 3-month phase. I think that Biden 20 years ago would have said the first phase or something, the first 3 months or something. The first time is between, and this is part of aging. And by the way, I'm in the middle of it. When I was researching non-zero, I had a phone conversation with this historian, William McNeil. Do you know who he was?
Mm-hmm.
He wrote a book called Plagues and People, which got a lot of attention, but also this kind of magisterial book, The Rise of the West, that won the National Book Award. Very, very well-known historian. We were talking, and he said, how old are you? And I said, 42. And he said, you're at the height of your powers. And he was right. I could sense only a few years later decline in my analytical powers. I'm not kidding. It's happening to all of us, except young people.
Except Bob, you're getting more wisdom.
Well, that's.
In a
way,
I'm being sarcastic, but what you're building up more of a knowledge.
Then why doesn't Biden have the wisdom to drop out of the race? But maybe
that's a good question.
It plateaus. Maybe the wisdom plateaus after the and of course it's different for different vocations. Mathematicians, it's like your early 20s, right? It's like historians, it's your early 40s, because you do accumulate the knowledge, even if you're strictly speaking, your analytical powers have declined. Anyway, I digress. But one thing I want to say is, as people get older, their language does get a little less, supple and fluid, right? Yeah. Like even John Kerry, when he was Secretary of State, perfectly capable. But I then, in the middle of that, heard, while he was Secretary of State, some congressional testimony he delivered when he was in his 20s. It was like night and day. He was way, way more eloquent back then. And so this happens all, but I do think this kind of roughness of language, the first time is between the woman and doctor, I think that's a little bit of a sign. Now, that's not incapacitating or disqualifying. I think, but the weird thing is,
and there's one part of it which is both to his benefit and his detriment, that these are practice answers. So how many times did they practice? What are you going to say when you're asked about abortion?
That's the strange thing. You can tell that about this, right? He's like the high school kid at the debate listing, okay, first point, second point, third point. And yet it can't be that in the practice they said, say the second phase is between the doctor and an extreme situation. That's not analogous to the first phase being between the woman. That's just not the way you would say it.
And some of the more mangled things he said, I think, were sort of half memorized, trying to get it back what he was supposed to say, and it comes out in a garbled fashion.
I know that feeling, actually, when you're delivering a talk that you've pretty well prepared, but you don't want to read it.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you try to remember the exact phrasing that is in the draft, you'll screw up. You're better off winging it. And maybe he was kind of torn between those two things. Anyway, this was a little odd. Then it gets worse. Let me play the one that got the most attention. This is only 10 minutes in, and this is when I went, oh shit, he's toast. I mean,
I said, oh shit, 60 seconds in. I mean, you probably
well, he looked bad. He sounded bad.
He looked bad. He sounded bad. He did very badly at the very beginning.
But what I'm about to play is exactly what his backers had feared. Their worst nightmare coming true. And I'm going to play the end of it where it gets really bad and then go back and read the whole thing. So anyway, here you go.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President.
So, and then, of course, after that, Trump says, yeah, you beat Medicare, you beat it to death, showing that he is, if a little mean, agile.
Yeah.
And Biden is not. So let me, now it may be, by the way, that he was going to say something more about if we finally beat Medicare, which seems to make no sense. And that Tapper kind of cut it. It wasn't clear whether he had planned to say anything more, but let me go back and read, start a few sentences earlier. He's talking about a plan to tax rich people more. He says, and I'll culminate with what we just heard. He says, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. I mean, billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24% or 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 million. And again, it's kind of poignant. He so wants to get it right. You almost get the sense that that's what's leading him to screw up. There is one of those numbers he had memorized, 24 or 25%. And he keeps trying to correct himself and get things exactly right. But anyway, if they just paid 24% or 25%, any one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say. In a 10-year period, we'd be able to wipe out his debt. He meant the debt Trump had accumulated. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, childcare, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with and then you heard it, with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare. So, I mean, do you have any take? There's a couple of things I might say, but do you have a take?
So here's one thing, which is, it's very disfluent. It's obviously, but the idea is perfectly coherent. If we tax the rich more, we could pay for all these social programs, which I want to pay for. It's not, and deal with Trump's horrible deficit that he left us. The idea, it's not word salad. It's just poorly expressed and disfluent and hesitant and so on. And it sounds worse than when you read it, because when he said it, you hear the pauses, you hear the struggles.
Oh, they were so long and painful. Yeah. And okay, but it starts out with the kind of conflations of words all of us make. Million, I meant billion. He does that at 24, 25. But then when he says what I've been able to do with the COVID. Now, I think what he meant was there's a prescription, some kind of cap on prescription drug payments or something that I guess he got into Medicare and hopes to extend to everybody. I think that's the idea. So when he jumps to COVID, that's in a slightly different category. He means with prescription drugs. They are connected to COVID, but that's still, I mean, one thing you saw again and again is, yes, the things he said that were different from what he meant to say are connected in his brain to what he meant to say naturally, and certainly with million and billion, 24, 25, but then with some of them, it's like, wow, he's really kind of shifting categories here, and the COVID is one of them, and then the final is one of those, and then the final thing is, if we finally beat Medicare, I guess he means beat the prescription drug problem, but who knows? I mean, this is bad. I mean, it's first of all, it is again the worst nightmare in terms of the optics, but it's cognitively not encouraging, I think.
I would agree with that.
So the final thing is a different kind of weird. In a way, I think this is the weirdest thing that he did.
You sent me this before, and now I'm regretting we decided to go down this road, because I'm starting to feeling really bad for Biden.
I feel bad
last
for
one
him too.
Is the worst.
I feel bad for him too. And the people I'm maddest at are like Jill, who really should. I mean, it's hard to be objective about your spouse, especially if you know they want it, they want another term. But come on. I mean, she must have known a year ago. I mean, there have been a ton of these kinds of things at press conferences and so on, and you hear these reports, from anonymous staffers and so on. Go ahead. Sorry.
So I read in the Times today his family is encouraging him to stay, and you don't know how much of this is real. It could be that everyone's going to sort of there's a collective action problem, and you don't want to be the one person, family member, Obama, possible contender, to jump in and say he got to go. You want to wait, and then everybody does it all together. So, but still, I do think his family is giving him advice that maybe is in their own interest, or they perceive it as his interest and not the party's interest or the country's interest. And I don't know. I forget what the next thing I was going to say. I should have began with number one.
Yeah, there you go. It's too late for you to run for president. But Clinton, Bill Clinton and Obama, I'm sorry. I mean, they have to be thinking of the good of the country and the party.
Has Bill Clinton weighed in on this?
No, they both said the reassuring things that have helped restore his momentum. I looked at the betting market yesterday, and the chances were 59% of him being the nominee. I looked an hour ago, it was 62. I looked a minute ago, it's 63. So, do you feel the Joe momentum? He's the comeback kid. But this is gonna be bad. I saw like somebody did a payoff matrix on Twitter, like 4 quadrants. Like he runs, he drops out, Trump wins, the Democrats win, and it's basically if he drops out, it's kind of this guy had 70% Trump wins, and of course that's disastrous for. I'm sorry, if he stays in. See, I can't run for president either. If he stays in, and Trump wins, which is, I think, the probable outcome if he stays in, disastrous for his legacy. That's bad. But this guy kind of pointed out that if he stays in and wins, it's probably the case that within a couple of years, it's going to be obvious to everyone he shouldn't be president. I will predict that if he wins within 2 years, either it will be the consensus view that he no longer has the cognitive capacity to be president, or they will be hiding him in a basement and just not letting him speak impromptu. There is a trajectory of decline here over the last 6 years, and it's not going in the right direction.
I think that's right. And the people who are saying, however, I don't think they're being very honest about it. Well, it's a bad debate. Obama says, I had a bad debate too, which he did, because he was, I remember this, he was unpleasant and too aggressive and kind of distant and unpleasant. But then the second debate, he decided to become nicer and more charming. But aging isn't the kind of thing that gets better. And this is the product of age. And, maybe he'll have a better debate next time. Maybe something will happen. It ebbs and flows. Maybe he won't have a cold.
Well, he will probably have a better debate. And maybe, he has masterfully set the bar even lower than it would have been with this performance. But
the problems are not going to get better. The problems are not going to get better.
He needs to get a lot better after this.
And I think there's a moral issue. I'm shocked at the Democrats who have lied about his capacities. And I'd be kind of shocked if they keep on going with him, because like you say about the payoff matrix, and Ross Douthat had something in the Times where he pointed out, everyone's talking about we want to get somebody who will beat Trump. Yeah, that's true. But also, presumably they'd like to get somebody who, who would be a good president. And
that would be nice too.
That would be nice too.
Yeah. Now, I mean, it's not as if Obama and Clinton together even could flip a switch. If Biden wants the nomination, if he doesn't drop out, the delegates are pledged to vote for him. And so you can't literally force him off the stage, but there's so many things they could have tried to do, and maybe they're working behind the scenes. And of course, we haven't seen definitive polls, but I don't think this will show up in a really dramatic way in the polls per se. Um, but it doesn't have to. He was already behind.
Yeah.
And I think it has set in motion forces that will just erode his candidacy more gradually. Just a sapping of energy from like young volunteers, from otherwise supportive like elite influencers.
Yeah.
And a number of people are just kind of pissed off at the whole Democratic establishment for letting this happen, and their hearts aren't going to be in this anyway.
And the prominent, we get to the final thing, which is the one I'm trying to avoid. But New York Times, New Yorker, they made statements. This guy has to step down. We love Biden, wonderful accomplishment. He should step down with dignity, be remembered for his love of the country in doing so. That only works if he steps down. If he doesn't step down, and then he's in there, they kind of got to walk it back. Are they basically going to say, yes, we said he's not fit to be president, but he's better than the other guy? But that's not the kind of ringing endorsement you want. So once people, so there's kind of a game theory element to this, which is if these institutions want him to win and believed he wouldn't step down, they should have shut up. They should have said, great, bad debate, whatever, not front page story. Who cares? Debates don't matter anyway. Given that they've taken the step of saying that he should step down, they have made it much harder to win, much harder for him to win if he doesn't.
And to be fair to Obama, of course, that is weighing on him as well.
Yeah.
If Trump can cut an ad saying even Barack Obama says, he shouldn't be running for president, that hurts. That hurts. And I grant that. But, Obama didn't have to
And Trump already has his, he has a million ads. He has an ad with the clips of Biden's performance. And we also have an ad saying, we don't think Biden should be president, but don't take our word for it. And then show clips from CNN, MSNBC, the editorial board of New York Times. They agree that Biden is not prepared to be president. Those are tough ads to beat.
They are. And I think if Biden were smart, he'd recognize that they put him in an even tougher position than he was going to be in, and that there's a chance to preserve his legacy, which otherwise will probably be destroyed. Now, look, it's really hard. It's hard. It's just, when you're getting older and, even much less dramatic cases, mine, for example, where you're just getting older, it's not going to last forever. Your career's winding down. It's very hard. You want to fight forever. But like I said, I blame Jill, Obama, Clinton. You should have heard my masterful plan by which Obama could have orchestrated the open primary. I mean, I won't bore you with it now, but it was good.
Yeah, and the stakes are high. I mean, if you keep the Non-Zero podcast going beyond a point where you do a good job running them. If I stay as a tenured professor beyond a point when I do good research and quality teaching, it's not the end of the world. But in Biden's case, it could literally be the end of the world.
It could be. This is a good point. I can't literally end the world with a bad podcast. No. Sad to say. I had hoped to reach that level of influence. I'm afraid I've given up on that. But that's a good point. That's a good distinction. Anyway, Paul, I'm counting on you to stage an intervention when I get that bad. And I want you to do it publicly. I want you to say, Bob, the time has come.
There was something in The West Wing where the fictional president, Bartlett, had some sort of neurodegenerative disease. And he would play chess with his body man. And the idea would be when his chess got particularly bad, then they step in. And he's time for him to go. So our conversations this may be entirely a false memory, by the way, and in any case, our conversations will be that sort of thing. So at some point in the parrot room, I just say, well, this wasn't a good day for you.
Yeah. And I'll say, I accept that guidance, Paul. You
Yeah,
can't be
okay.
on my podcast anymore.
I could think you'd be. I don't think you take it with grace. That's part of the problem.
No, it is hard. It is hard. But God, should Jill have ever had a tough conversation with him a year ago? Anyway, so here's the final.
And a small thing, but everyone else noticed this too. The way she spoke to him afterwards, after debate, where
You answered
Joe,
every question.
Now I know what she meant. She meant Trump got the questions and he answered every question. Not really true, but in any case, but it came off so condescending.
Yeah, it sounded like she's a teacher. It sounded like you're talking to a kindergartner and giving him a gold star for trying to answer the question.
Okay, you want to read the third thing?
Okay. Again, this is also about Roe versus Wade. He says, we're in a state where in 6 weeks they're in Georgia. We're in a state where in 6 weeks you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. Let me actually compliment him on this sentence, because you could see him pause before he said what your circumstances are. And I think what he was doing was avoiding using the word abortion, which was smart, because he didn't want to say, he just, I think that part's good. He says, whether you need help. Then he says, the idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying you're going to turn civil rights back to the states. Let each state have a different rule. Fine, that makes sense.
Yep. Then
he says, look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who was just murdered, and he went to the funeral.
So the idea, what actually was that? What was he talking about?
Well, I'll have let me say, read a little more, and then now he who went to the funeral, I think, must be the guy who murdered him. But first of all, it's a bad sign. Nobody has any way of knowing what he's talking about when he says
I thought it was Trump who went to the funeral.
No, I don't. Oh, maybe it could be. It could be. But, that could make sense of it, because let me read the rest. He says, look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who was just murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming into, they talk about that. But here's the deal. There's a lot of young women are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters. It's just ridiculous. And they can do nothing about it. Now, what it means for the last part, is they're not even letting victims of rape get abortions, apparently, including those who are raped by their sisters, but I'll leave that aside. But the weird thing, so apparently there's been some kind of Trump talking point about somebody who's murdered by an immigrant, and you're probably right. Trump probably went to the funeral.
Yeah.
But what's super weird is him dragging this talking point about immigration, a Trump talking point about immigration, into his discussion of abortion, and then dismissing it. They talk about that, but that is, again, that's yet another kind of connection that in his brain, where you understand why there's a connection maybe between abortion and this thing, but that his brain, used that connection is weird.
Yeah.
And that just seemed to me kind of a theme. It's like the brain is a network of nodes of concepts and stuff, and the process by which his articulation follows node to node is just lacking in the discipline that is normal, and it's veering in different kinds of directions. It just I don't know.
I agree. The first two things you read, it's kind of, you get what he's trying to say. He's being inarticulate. He's stumbling over billion and trillion and numbers and so on. He says stuff like kill Medicare, which is, it makes for a good attack. But you know what he means. And this third
actually
one,
I still don't actually exactly, but go ahead.
I think something about save Medicare. Kill
by beat Medicare, he meant not beat Medicare. I think
exactly
right. Yeah,
but this one with the drift into Trump's immigration, if that's what it was about, was genuinely incoherent, and it seems to be more plainly a problem of thought and not just speech.
And these, go ahead.
I think it could both be true that Biden's debate performance reflects some real long-term problems with his cognitive capacities, which are going to get worse. And it was a bad night. And that, there's always fluctuations. And if he didn't have a cold and it was like a couple of hours earlier, or if he properly medicated, he would have done better. But at very least, I'm not the first to say this, if they keep him as a nominee, he has to demonstrate that he could do more than read from a teleprompter. He has to demonstrate that he can actually have discussions with people that are not necessarily softball interviews, but discussions with people. I think Ezra Klein said he should go on Joe Rogan.
Oh my
maybe he should
God.
go get interviewed by, well, maybe not, but okay, get interviewed by Lex Friedman, who's full of love and so on. Maybe the Non-Zero podcast.
I mean, yeah, I'm available. What he should probably do is go on the Pod Save the World podcast, because those guys all turned on him in the short run, and I think they're walking it back.
Yeah.
And this would give them a chance to say, okay, we've seen the new Biden. This is why we're walking it back. But the thing is, even that friendly a crowd would be a challenge for him, I think. I mean, it would be a challenge not to generate video that Trump can exploit without taking it out of context.
Yeah. The bar is low. In defense of that strategy, the bar is fairly low.
But, it was a bad sign when he chose not to do the Super Bowl interview.
Yeah.
That's just a total softball American ritual. They're not there to do gotcha at the Super Bowl interview. And they turned that down. That should have been a clue.
I have mixed feelings, because in part of it, I felt very, very bad for him. And watching the debate was extremely unpleasant, because I have nothing against Joe Biden. I think he's as politicians go, a fairly good one, fairly decent one. But it's mortifying watching him do this in public and knowing that he knows what's happening as it's happening. But he is to blame for this. He did not take your good advice from early on, and he shouldn't have ran for a second term. And if he doesn't step down, that's kind of on him.
But it's hard to sense how much you are slowing down, because you are both the gauge and the thing that's being gauged.
For most of us,
it still seems like, I think, fast, Paul, but that's because the assessment machine has slowed down as much as the generative machine.
It's true for most of us, but a world leader has abundant sources of feedback from the external world, and now including the New York Times editorial page. And,
Oh, yeah. But that just got his back up. I mean, he's like, they've said I was down before, but I'm a fighter. And, the tragedy is that, and, one reason Obama doesn't have much influence with him is because Obama talked him out of running in 2016 so that Hillary could run. Well, Hillary was just tailor-made to lose to Donald Trump. Biden would have beaten Trump decisively, I believe. And that would have been the end of Trump. So Obama actually has a lot to answer for. And then Obama would have, Biden would have made it through a second term, and everything would be fine. Yeah. Except that Kamala would be running for president. But I digress. So
if you had to gauge who would do better, Biden stays in, or Biden steps down and Harris is the nominee, who would you put your money on? If you had to choose those options, simply with an idea, not talking about competence, simply with an idea of beating Trump.
I honestly think, and I'm not a Kamala fan, and if he does bow out, I hope she won't be the nominee, but I honestly think she would have a slightly better chance than him. She's not popular, but she wouldn't do the kinds of things in debate that he did. Yeah. And, the troops would rally. Even though there are a lot of people in the party who aren't wild about it, they'd rally. They'd be like, okay, Joe did the right thing. We got to prove it was the right thing. He did what we wanted him to do. We got to beat Trump. I think it would be okay. And of course, it's true, as the people who counsel against this hot swap thing warn, that if it's not Kamala, that may leave some bitterness. If there's a whole fight, especially if there's no person of color on the ticket, or worst case scenario politically would be two white males. In terms of intra-democratic politics. So it's not an easy thing. On the other hand, you can design a ticket that, other things aside, if you assume Democratic Party cohesion, would just I think trounce Trump. I think, Gretchen Whitmer and, you like Cory Booker, right?
Yeah, Gavin Newsom, Cory Booker.
I'm not a Gavin Newsom fan.
I don't have much of it. I'm a huge Cory Booker fan for some reason. Like it's a soft like, because you could maybe argue me out of this, but I liked him in the debates. I like his personal story. He's a big friend of the Jews.
He has been very pro-Israel. Whether or not that's the same as being a friend of the Jews.
I wasn't actually thinking pro-Israel. I was thinking of his activism as a student at Yale and I think Oxford, where he gets very involved in Jewish student groups.
He went to Stanford, I think, didn't he? He played football at. You taught at Yale. We're gonna have to give you a cognitive test if you get this wrong, Paul.
You want to read out the 5 words that I'm supposed to remember. In any case, just to go back and answer my own question, I agree with you about Harris. I think people don't like her, but I think I don't know what the word is. It's a soft dislike, where there's all these memes of her saying these ridiculous things, and she has maybe a grating laugh, and she pisses people off, and she's not a good campaigner. But all of that could be fixed. All of that could be coached, could be fixed. I think the Democratic Party will rally behind her. And I think she would destroy Trump in a debate. Or no, nobody ever destroys Trump, but she would do better.
She would do better than Biden. Plus, she believes that what can be unburdened by what has been, or something like that. Well, anyway, I'm in favor of that.
She's not wrong, you know. And let's see. Yale Law School. Rhodes, Cory Booker.
Oh, yeah. Okay. But as an undergrad, he went to Stanford, right?
I think so.
Played football there, tight end. Do you realize he's like 6'4"?
Well, that's Trump is only 6'3".
Yeah, Cory could kick his ass. Cory never.
You're right about Stanford, but also Rhodes Scholarship and then Oxford.
Yeah. No, he didn't really catch on in the Democratic Party, but I think he'd be a very effective general election candidate.
Yeah.
I mean, the Democrats would rather see, Raphael Warnock of Georgia. But the thing about that is, if he was on the ticket and they won, then a Republican governor would choose his replacement in Georgia. So the Democrats would lose a seat in the Senate.
So what's your prediction of what's going to happen?
Check the latest betting odds.
Pre-register, as they say.
I trust the betting markets, and according to them, Joe Biden is going to be the nominee. 63% chance at last check. I'll check again, but yeah, it's he's stubborn. The family's united, and he's the guy that's got to do it. And look, it's obvious that the people who would need to have made the push are not going to make the push. He's down to 61%. The Joe momentum is reversed. So who knows?
It's not obvious to me. I think there may be, if he steps down, he's not going to step down right away. He's going to give it a little bit of time, so it's not so directly and obviously a product of the debate. I don't know. I would, if I had to bet, I'd say he is going to step down.
I think if the polls are just abysmal, but we'll see.
We'll see.
I don't think there'll be a huge change there. So what else? Geez.
So many things. I'm reading a good book, Deep Utopia by Nick Bostrom.
Now, remind me, did you
have Bostrom on your show?
I think you asked me that in the overtime segment some weeks ago. Did you not? And
this is more of a cognitive test.
This is like we're both in La La Land, but I think you did. And I think I said we had invited him, and he had said, no, but I think that turns out to be wrong. This is how much how rapid my cognitive decline is. I don't know who I was thinking of, because I emailed him last week, and he's going to be on the podcast.
Oh, okay.
So I actually discovered a couple of months ago that he had cited my book Non-Zero in his paper on the singleton, which is a very important concept mentioned in his famous book, Superintelligence. And he actually thinks we met at a conference like 20 years ago or so. But look, when you're in my state of cognitive decline, that might as well be before you were born, right?
I think it's just your state of fame. I mean, everybody remembers meeting with you. Why would you remember meeting with them?
It is a power move to be the one who doesn't remember meeting. It's better than showing up for lunch 15 minutes late. Did we? Oh, well. Must have
Yeah.
slipped my mind.
Must have been a big deal for you, but honestly,
Yeah,
like, you know.
yeah. Mhm.
Anyway, his Deep Utopia is a lot of fun. I feel he reinvents him. He's this brilliant guy, but he gets into certain topics and moves from one to the other. And it used to be, you know, AI might destroy us all, simulation. But now his newest book is about what happens. Let's play around with the idea that we enter a post-scarcity utopia. We have
Mhm.
everything we need. Intergalactic travel and super intelligent AIs making our lives better. What would life be like? Would we be happy? Would we have purpose? And so on. And his book is a meditation on those topics, and highly recommended.
Yeah, it is striking some people as a big switcheroo because he was he's in some ways responsible for a certain amount of AI doomerism, but I don't know that's because he was such a doomer himself.
No.
His book Super Intelligence, like I don't know, 10 or more years ago, had a big influence on a lot of Silicon Valley people. All these people read it. And it sketched out all these scenarios, and it did emphasize that you could get this rapid takeoff of a super intelligent AI, and it could be that there would be this one dominant AI. I'm only partway through that book, so I'm not sure that he actually predicts that so much as explores that as one possible path.
Yeah.
But yeah, now he's talking about the possibility that AI could solve all our problems, and asking the question of whether that would not, in a certain sense, create more problems,
Right.
because we just wouldn't know what to do with the time and the riches.
And to be fair, it's a strange book in certain ways. It's not written as a normal nonfiction book. It's written as a story where different characters stumble into a lecture, and it's by the famous professor Nick Bostrom, and then follows them around and everything like that. But he's not saying this is what's going to happen. He's going on. He's saying, look, let's explore the idea. What if we
Right.
get our post-scarcity world? What would follow from it? I think he says a lot of interesting things. It's highly recommended.
Yeah.
I'm just finishing it off and I'm enjoying it.
And he's also famous for his argument about whether we live in a simulation, arguing that actually, when you think about it, it's quite plausible.
Are you gonna spring your response at him?
Well,
I'm sure
I have this vague intuition that there may be a kind of circularity to the argument, but I'm less confident of that than I used to be. I took a closer look at the argument. It's been kind of too simplistically described, I should say. Too simplistic is redundant, Paul.
I admire the verbal acuity. Just, you know.
It used to be. It's not anymore, and I refuse to adjust. It's
So
not
you're having Bostrom on. That's going to be great.
Yeah. So what? Oh, so much is going on now. At some point, we have to go into overtime.
Yeah.
I don't know when.
I realized that last time we talked, I gave you a hard time because you were very angry, and also at me. And you had just finished your meditative retreat, and I mocked you for coming out in a kind of a rage. But I never really I'm very curious. It was a week, very roughly. What was that like?
First of all, rage is too strong a word.
No,
I was
not rage.
animated.
You were.
I'm passionate.
You were
I care
animated,
deeply about the world.
You were animated in a negatively valenced way.
Well, the last part goes without saying.
You call me a very bad name in the intro.
That was a joke.
Oh, I know. It was affection. That's what men do.
It was affection. I call all my friends that, and my former friends. Most of them are now former friends. But anyway, I called them that.
But did you did you eat vegetarian buffet? Were you silent the whole time? Did you sleep on a hard cot? I want to know the sort of corporeal details. Were you in a meditative? I know you did walking meditation. We talked about that. Did you have to squat on a hard floor for hours at a time? What happened?
Well, actually, that was one issue. If you want to get into the gory details, is how I would sit, because I have modest back trouble, and everyone kind of reaches an age with meditation where sitting on the cushion is tough. And so some people just sit in chairs. And it took me a couple of days to decide that I should probably make that transition. And that was somewhat wasted time agonizing over that. But in the morning, I do sit on a cushion when I do my morning sitting. And I could have gotten through it and kind of wish I had toughed it out. But the answer is, you do, I don't know, maybe 5.5 hours a day of sitting meditation. And then there's 5 or 5.5 hours a day of walking meditation scheduled, but that's a little looser because people usually, if they have to do something, go back to the room and do something, that's walking meditation time is what gets used up. But, the last session ends at 9:30 p.m., the last meditation session, and they wake you up at 5:30 a.m. So one issue is if you wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep, you're going to have a sleep deficit. And that happened to me. But, it's not a super austere. There are more austere retreats, and there are many less austere retreats. This was at the Insight Meditation Society, which is an important institution. It was the big kind of beachhead, or one of them, for Vipassana meditation, mindfulness meditation. There were kind of three waves of meditation that came to the U.S. I would say Zen in the kind of 50s, Tibetan hit Colorado, especially kind of in the 70s, early 70s, maybe late 60s. And then Vipassana also in the 70s, kind of early 70s. And Insight Meditation Society in Massachusetts was a really important institution. Actually, one of the highlights of the retreat was after it, I stopped by and saw Joseph Goldstein, who's one of the three founders. He's such a pleasure to talk to him. And along with Sharon Salzberg and Jack Cornfield, I think, who's now has that retreat center in Marin County, Spirit Rock. I don't know what else.
Is it silent?
Yeah, it's all silent. There are a couple of times a week when you meet with a teacher. In this case, just in groups, and you go around if you're having any issues, and so you can speak then. And then each night there's a so-called Dharma talk where the teacher, or in early evening, the teacher gives some kind of talk about Buddhism. So you hear words. I mean, they're also giving you meditation guidance sometimes. The whole group. But if you want a more austere version, the Goenka retreats are also in the Vipassana tradition, and they're free, but they're quite austere, I think. And they're also more authoritarian. It's like you kind of have to show up for every single sit, which I pretty much do anyway, but they don't.
No phones, I guess.
No, I mean, I certainly don't. They actually had a ritual of, they had a phone renunciation ritual where you could like turn in your smartphone if you wanted to actually do that, which I did. But no, I always am completely off the grid for the retreat.
So you wake up in the middle of the night and you're just there.
And you think, what if I can't get back to sleep? See, that's the thing. If I were Biden, I would have been in terrible shape for this debate.
I know.
Because it's like you think what he needed was a nap, right? That afternoon. But what if he lies down and he goes, oh God, what if I can't? That's the kind of thing I would do. Like, what if I can't get my nap? And Trump trounces me. That's me. That's why I can't be president.
No, I got, like, it's a somewhat older person problem, but you wake up too early for me. Like, and then if I can't get back to sleep, my whole day is shot, I think. And then when I have to debate Trump later on in the evening, I'm not at my best. And it's so frustrating. Yeah. You would imagine that a president would have access to some excellent drugs for this.
Oh, I've got to think that this, what we saw was in spite of the finest that pharmacology can offer. Come on.
Yeah.
Stakes are high. I think, Hunter could probably hook him up, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a great tradition since Kennedy, I guess. Kennedy was like high as a kite.
He was getting amphetamine injections, right? That's what Biden needed. He probably the mistake was oral administration. He should have just
speak like a true druggie.
No, Kennedy got these things. I think he got amphetamines and probably steroids and all kinds of things.
A lot of painkillers for his back.
Yeah. So I guess maybe we have a lot more to talk about actually, but we should probably do it in overtime, available to paid subscribers of either the Non-Zero newsletter or the falsely modest Small Potatoes newsletter. Falsely modest is not part of the title newsletter. That's my
No.
editorial comment.
And one thing we talk about is something which is going to come out in so the small potatoes today. I have a response to a very interesting article by two philosophers, Evan Westra and Dan Kelly, that just came out. Next week, some friends of mine are going to argue with me about AI. They're going to have a rebuttal. Talk about that later.
Oh.
And then a week after, I want to put out something on loyalty. And maybe we could talk about loyalty.
I read a draft of your loyalty piece, which you kindly shared with me.
And you have a different intuition, maybe. You don't value loyalty as much as I do.
I have mixed emotions about loyalty.
It's the Buddhism. You know, renouncing
and this
attachments.
This is relevant to the Biden thing, as I'll explain. Loyalty is one of the, I blame Jill and I blame loyalty. Those are the two things I blame. So yeah, and maybe we'll talk about, maybe I'll quiz you a little more on the Deep Utopia book. I don't know how far you've gotten, but also this show Dark Matter that you steered me toward. I'm starting to, I don't know.
Wait,
I'm starting to wonder if you gave me a bump steer. Season 1 is now over.
There's not going to be a season 2, is there? Well, I guess there could be.
I think they've set it up for that to be a possibility for sure.
Okay, we won't spoil it. I thought it ended great. I thought my advice for you was excellent. Also, have you been watching Presumed Innocent?
No.
Okay.
But I'm happy to hear about it. What else? There's other stuff. There's so much. If I have time, I'm going to raise an alarm about your sense of humor.
Well, okay. Maybe we should lead with that.
Lead with that. Okay.
That stupid joke on Twitter. I thought it was extremely funny.
Yes, you know what I'm talking about. So
yeah.
I think you do. So
I do.
Go to one of our newsletters, Non-Zero Small Potatoes, become a paid subscriber. Right there, you'll see the post with this stuff on it. And thanks for listening.
Yeah.
And we will see you next time.